This video is going to serve as my preview for the Ravens-Titans Week 6 matchup across the pond. I will provide some data during this video, which will be pretty long, to be honest with you. I'm only going to take a look at the Ravens offense versus the Titans defense because of the amount of time left in the weekend and the time start, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time for that game on Sunday morning. I do have 312 Ravens offensive plays categorized in the database. So when I reference some of these things, just to let you know, I have that information. I will provide a link in the description for a shared document where you can view that in an Excel file yourself. It should be organized by game and then personnel type, and then there is a couple of tabs for first down and third down. But we're going to get right started with the film. And I'm going to talk about something that one thing the Ravens are doing very well, another thing which is actually somewhat disappointing in light of the way we lost the Steelers game last week, another situation we're having a lot of trouble with, and then how well Lamar Jackson is throwing the football when he has time. Then we'll get to Titans defensive film. I'll tell you some of the things I think I see. Really focused on 3 games of theirs on defense against the Chargers, the Bengals, and then the Colts last week in Week 5. So let's get started with the film by looking at some Ravens run plays from inside the 10. I should say just Ravens plays on offense from inside the 10. I've got in the database 29 plays from inside the 10 and closer. It's a pretty healthy run-pass balance, I'll be honest with you. I was a little surprised with the run-pass balance. I thought it was more skewed towards the pass, but we have a lot of rushing touchdowns, and we have multiple guys who have them. Justice Hill has 2 touchdowns. He had 2 against the Texans. Gus has 1 against the Bengals, I believe. J.K. had the 1 against the Texans in Week 1. Lamar has 4. So we've got a lot of rushing touchdowns, which is what makes it really unfortunate the way that we gave away points last week, throwing the ball twice consecutively after a successful run by Gus down inside the 5 against the Steelers, leading up to the interception thrown by Lamar to Joey Porter Jr. When we have been running the ball inside the 5, inside the 10 with Lamar and with the running backs, I feel like it's been quite successful. And I think that's what makes that interception so disappointing and that situation where we came away with no points. Really cool little play that we ran against the Bengals. We call it 200 sprint to the right, 800 sprint will be to the left. They're trying to get the spacing here for Aguilar and Duve to get in the way of these defenders. Watch Aguilar's body language with Duve. Kind of like telling him, okay, you're good. Because now he's got the spacing to be able to pick guys and not let someone run over the top, to really create a nice shield to allow Andrews to run underneath of. Pretty cool. And one of the things we haven't done a good job of in the last 2 or 3 years at all, I think running pick routes or running rub stuff. But getting back to the run game, look, we've been successful running the ball with multiple guys in this area for touchdowns, going back to Week 1. And again, that's what makes it so disappointing. The play that we chose to run in that moment last week, I think it's possible that it had something to do with Lamar's wrist. It seems quite obvious to me if you watch the way he threw the ball. First of all, he threw the ball really well last week, but the balls were floating. There wasn't nearly as much zip. When you see the play action pass to Zay Flowers, where Zay falls down and how underthrown it is and how behind Zay it is, it's very unusual for Lamar to be that off target with that throw when he's going to his right and the receiver is going to his right. In his career, he's generally been pretty good if he's rolling to his right and the receiver is going left to right. In terms of putting it on target in that situation, I think his hand really impacted it, and that's my overall point, is I think his hand may have impacted the play calling in that situation. I'm not sure why that graphic was so weird, but it's inside zone week 1 against the Texans. You can see multiple concepts that we're using. When we score at a high percentage inside the red zone, inside the 10, inside the 5, when we score at a high percentage with our defense, we can win any game. We'll win a lot of football games, let's put it that way. We've got to get points. We had 2 possessions against the Steelers where we didn't get any points, despite being down there inside the red zone one time and then inside the 10 another time. I'm talking about the possession to end the second quarter, and then obviously the interception on the ball intended to OBJ on the back shoulder fade. If we get points down there, I think we have chances to win every single game. Do we have to run with Lamar all the time? No, but it really creates that 11 on 11 situation, and I think also gives us the opportunity to get some one-on-ones to the backside, depending on how teams are matching up, and depending on who we want to try to get the football to. So far, we were excellent in the red zone inside the 10. Prior to that Steelers game, we wasted those 2 golden opportunities. But what strikes me is the number of different concepts that we've used down here and the number of different players that have had success. My summary point for the run game here inside the 10, inside the 5, inside the red zone is when we went away from it last week was when we returned to looking like the offense that we had in 2022. That was an abject failure oftentimes inside the red zone, inside the 10. I think the run game's got to be relied upon more in those situations. And yes, I mean the run game with Lamar. If you're one of those people who would like to see him run the ball less, congratulations, I am too. But the reality of it is right now it looks like playing 11 on 11 down there might provide our best chance to score until guys like Rashad Bateman, OBJ are completely healthy and able to take advantage of some of the matchups that we'll get. Hopefully I said that in the way that makes sense. The Steelers, and in some ways the call for the interception may have been caused by what the Steelers were doing at that time in terms of on any option play, they were running at Lamar. They were forcing him to give the football. So I got no problem if someone wants to say, Coach, you can say that you wanted to run a zone read or whatever you wanted to run, but the Steelers are going to run at him and force him to give the football in that situation, and that's entirely possible. All right, moving to something that I don't think we've been very good at, and I think it's quite obvious. We were extremely limited last week against the Steelers when Morgan Moses was out for the whole game, and then when Macari went out in pass pro. We had Falele and Stanley, and Ronnie Stanley just has not looked good this year. He has not. I think he'll get better. I think this team will get better. It somewhat reminds me of 2019. I mean, I don't know if you were around at that time, but man, after that loss to Cleveland, I think in week 4, it was a horrible time to be a Ravens fan. There was wholesale changes on the defensive end. We don't have those issues. Maybe we should call cover 0 a little bit less, but that's a separate, idea for a video. One thing we're struggling with on the O-line is stunts. Stunts are destroying us, in my opinion, and the protection issues are global. Linderbaum and Moses, to me, have been the best guys so far by far. And Moses had some issues late, I think, in the Browns game, but generally we have been getting beat across the board on multiple concepts, particularly stunts like this one. Now, there is a defensive hold, I think, that negates this one. We really struggle at left guard and left tackle with these stunts. What can we do about it? Some more quick screens, some fake screens to one side, screen to the other, chip people often, some more max protection stuff. I think against this Titans defense that's very aggressive, I think we might have to go play action early, which of course opens us up for the potential for a sack. Here's the type of stunt that I'm talking about. Forgive me for not going over it the first time. Watch 54. I think that's Quan Alexander. Going to kind of go at Simpson and then veer upfield. Highsmith loops underneath. We get beat on this consistently. In 2022, we got beat on those stunts with the center left guard combo often, Powers and Linderbaum. We didn't often get beat on those stunts with left tackle and left guard last year. I'm talking about Stanley and Powers when Stanley was playing. It's an issue that's got to be fixed in some way or form or fashion. I don't know if it means leaving one more guy in to block occasionally. This is the answer that teams are going to provide in terms of how to defend Lamar. If they want to remove our options, it's just reality. Like, we're not going to see less of this. We're going to see more of this, or at least an equivalent amount. And there was people before the season that thought we would see less. Here's another stunt. 31, picking Linderbaum. 54, Quan Alexander going around. These stunts are being run against us because they are generally successful. Watt and Highsmith were speed rushing, so it's strategic. What I mean by saying strategic is If they're running a stunt on the inside, then the outside guys are going to speed rush. Their rush lanes are often predicated on the call, meaning they're telling these guys, you're on a speed rush path because we're running a stunt in here that we think is going to clog all this up for Lamar. They're telling us what they think of Lamar right here. It's not what they think of his passing. They're telling us, hey, we understand that if it's 3rd and 6, like it was on that play, forgive me for not saying that earlier, we cannot let him scramble because he will juke someone. And this is what makes this Titans game really interesting for me, is that the Titans under Mike Vrabel have often been a man-free team, at least when we have seen them. 4-man rush, man-free, linebacker and low hole dropper, and free safety middle of the field. The 2020 playoff game down in Tennessee, when Lamar scored to end near the end of the second quarter on that long run, that dissuaded the Titans from playing a lot of man-free with a 4-man rush. And they have to have looked at what the rest of the NFL is doing in terms of, hey, let's make him get rid of the ball, number one. Number two, we might get a sack. We might force a fumble because we've had fumbles this year. I think we have 10 fumbles. I saw one thing that said 12, but when I added the numbers up, it was 10. So I'm not sure, what that's about. But in any case, here's one where Stanley is just beat. These are issues that if we don't take care of, we will not be. It doesn't matter what we do inside the 10 and inside the 20. If we don't take care of these issues, we will not be a balanced offense at all. And the shame of it is when we have gotten Lamar time to throw the football. Forgive me, I was moving on to the next play. When we've gotten time for him to throw the football, he's been exceptionally good, with a couple of exceptions. But when we get pressure like this, it circumvents the whole process. If guys aren't open, or if we're not working through the progression, or if someone chooses the wrong route based upon their read, it seems to be a different issue often. And this was the first possession of the season for us. That was the first 3rd down that I think we saw. All right, moving forward, if we're going to talk about what we do well, when Lamar has time this year, it seems to me like the actual throws are, and I've said this multiple times, on target and on time. Against the Steelers, there was a clear lack of zip to me compared to what his actual arm strength is and what we've seen in 2023. But you're going to see about 5 or 6 throws here. If you're a Ravens fan, you've already seen them probably anyway. You're a Titans fan watching, first of all, thank you. It's going to be a heck of a game. Me personally, I really respect the Titans because I feel like we're almost like a mirror image of each other team-wise. And I think that this is a game that they need, the Texans need, and the Ravens need badly, which will make it probably all the more fun to watch for people who aren't Ravens fans and aren't Texans fans. But Ravens and Texans fans will be probably nervous as hell the entire time. This is a play action. I think this is the kind of thing we got to do against the Texans. We got to be able to get time, and unfortunately there might be times where we have to do this, where we have to utilize 2 guys on an edge defender, let other guys work together, 2-man route, 3-man route. Some people would say, oh, it's only a half-field read. Don't listen to all that BS. Sometimes teams call a half-field read, sometimes they don't. The Lions run flood concepts all the time, and when they don't run flood concepts, they run variations of flood concepts. Who cares? If you can protect your quarterback, it's a guy who can throw. It's a guy who can get the ball to receivers who win. Aguilar wins, and Lamar throws it. Awesome throw on this side to give Aguilar the best opportunity to catch it and then turn and get extra yards up the field. Aguilar's got 14 catches on 18 targets this year, guys. I think, now granted, he had a huge drop last week. Multiple guys need to redeem themselves. Andrews, Zay Flowers, Aguilar, Bateman, all of those guys, have something to make up for in terms of missed opportunities last week against the Steelers. But Aguilar overall this year has got 14 catches on 18 targets. Maybe it's 14 on 17 targets. I think that's the way it's going to be for the Aguilar, Bateman, OBJ group. For those 3 guys, I think you'll have a 3 or 4 week period where OBJ has 14, 15 catches on 20 targets and maybe 2 touchdowns, and Aguilar's kind of silent. And then I think you'll have another, maybe overlapping there at times. We'll get 2 of those guys hot. Kind of liken it to baseball a little bit. When you get your leadoff hitter and your number 2 guy both getting on base, both maybe extra base hits at times, then your offense is really going to take off. And I think that's kind of what we need. We need Aguilar and one of those other two guys to kind of sharpen up, not have drops. I don't think it's been a problem for Aguilar. I understand that, all of those guys have had drops in the past. Even Zay Flowers, there's people who talked about his drop percentage in college. The film, to me, didn't look nearly as bad as people said. I know that drops last week. There'll be some naysayers out there, but I love how Zay Flowers came back and competed. I think there's other guys on the team that could follow his lead, that could show a little bit more tenacity the way Zay Flowers did. I mean, Zay Flowers got crushed by TJ Watt, and then he got punched in the mouth. And I thought came back and played better afterwards. If we get one of those other guys, Bateman or OBJ, to start contributing like Aguilar is, and we can find time for Lamar, there's no reason why we can't win 4 out of 5 games, even in the toughest stretch that we have this season. I know we got a really difficult stretch of 6 games coming up. This defense is capable of stopping people or limiting people to field goals, if you will, when we need to. This offense has just got to pick up the slack. The Titans' run defense prior to the Colts game. I'm going to show you some Titans film here in a minute. Prior to the Colts game, the Titans' run defense I thought was spectacular. Now, I thought the Bengals went away from the run a little too soon, to be honest with you. But other than that, they had not given up, I think, 76 yards. I believe it was 76 yards in a single game prior to the Week 5 game against the Colts. Of course, they gave up 193 against the Colts. So take it for what it is coming from me. But look, let's get to the Titans defense and we'll show some film. Gave up 93 points through 5 games. They're a better defense than people talk about them. I really like the way they come downhill. Very aggressive and abrupt reads. I really like the inside linebacker. I think it's Al-Shahir. Roger McCreary's playing well. What do you say about Simmons? They got some holdover guys that are still there. I think they fly around and play fast. Have they given up some passing yards? Yes, and that's what. And 5 touchdown passes through 5 games. That's what makes this an interesting matchup. The Ravens had opportunities last week against the Steelers. If we catch those balls, clearly we've got a 2-touchdown, maybe 17-point lead. It's going to be damn near impossible for the Steelers to come back. Kind of doesn't matter what our offense does mid-third quarter on if we're up by 17 at that point, clearly. Conversely, the Titans have given up 1,200 passing yards in 5 games. But they've got 14 sacks. We have 18 sacks as a defense. What's my point? We match up well. It almost reminds me of like 2 boxers who've both been knocked out and both have a lot of power. I don't think either one of these teams is going to blow each other out. I think we're looking at 60 minutes of pure physical football. And it's going to come down to the last couple of minutes is my guess. If the Ravens are able to build a big lead, I feel like our defense is in great shape. I'm not going to be able to do a preview probably about their run game. I would love to sit here and watch some Derrick Henry film and try to evaluate it. Getting back to the Titans defense, they've given up 340 yards or more in 4 of their 5 games. The exception there was the Bengals game. They won 27-3, and they only allowed 211 yards to the Bengals. They've been very good, if you ask me, defensively. Like I said, Azeez Al-Shahir has 15 tackles. We'll get to a little bit of film for them. Some highlight stuff, I guess. He had 15 tackles last week against the Colts. They've got holdovers or guys that remain in Kevin Byard, Jeffrey Simmons, Harold Landry, Amani Hooker, guys that have kind of been around or guys that we've competed against. Simmons is somehow still only 26 years old, and Hooker's only 25. Crazy. They play fast, play downhill. I see a team that wants to be aggressive, and I don't necessarily mean like they want to put a ton of pressure on the quarterback, but I think they put pressure on you with just the way they play. They got Arden Key. They really collapse the run game at times. Now, granted, they're not dealing with a quarterback who's going to keep it and run around the edge here, so that changes the dynamic. Some of these teams that are facing them are providing a bubble threat off of the run play to kind of hold people. But you see everybody else is just collapsing this down. In terms of their sacks, Danico Autry has 4. Arden Key has 2.5. He's the guy that came over from the Jags. Remember, the Ravens brought him in a couple of years ago, potentially signed him before 2022. I think Roger McCreary has done some really good things for this defense. I know there's people who have said things about him this year, but he's got 2 sacks. He's very active. I really like his game. He seems disruptive. I'm going to show you some run plays of him defending the run later and how I think they do a nice job of playing team defense. I would not overlook this Titans defense at all. They get after you, and when they have a read to make, they make it quickly and they explode. Simmons has 2.5 sacks. Like I said, McCreary has 2 sacks. Al-Shahir has 1, but I think he leads the team with 47 tackles. Jack Giddens has 40 tackles. Pretty good. He's the field side inside linebacker. I'll bring this back and show it to you. And I'll talk about this when I talk about their pass defense. I'm recording this one time through, to be honest with you, so because the file size is smaller when I do that. So field side inside linebacker, I think, is Giddens. I don't think it's Gibbons. If I am mispronouncing that, forgive me. And then this is Al-Shahir to the boundary. He's the boundary side guy. Typically, the nickel is going to be McCreary. And your safeties is Biard. Pretty good against the run. Even in that Colts game, they had some moments where they defended the run quite well. You can see some of them here. Does it mean that we won't, get anything going? No, it just means that we're going to have to be physical. We're going to have to execute it. And again, you see similar concepts. I packaged these plays intentionally. Similar to that Bengals play that I showed you. You've got 3 guys out there trying to occupy and hold defenders, and then just guys collapsing on the backside. They're not respecting a run threat there, so that dynamic changes when you've got Lamar Jackson on the field like we do. If you look at it from the Steelers' perspective, what they did eventually after the first possession was when the running back crossed Lamar's face, that guy ran right at Lamar, forcing a give read, basically telling Lamar, you got to give the football, dude. We could also throw the bubble out here. I would look for Zay Flowers out there. You're normally going to get the nickel to the field, which is McCreary. Aggressive, fast, physical defense. We've always had trouble with Simmons. He's just a load. They get after the quarterback. Like I said, 14 sacks. Multiple guys contribute. They really look like the same Titans defense, same quality of defense that we've seen in the past, where there's times where they give up yards, but they make big plays. They're explosive. I think they're tough as hell, if you ask me. And they get after the football. Look at McCreary. McCreary is a nickel who plays like a linebacker at times. Right here. He's committed to getting involved. Often lines up with inside leverage of the slot, meaning he's inside of the number 2 receiver, and so he'll be able to respond to an inside run play. I wonder about that against us and our pin pull stuff. If he's going to line up inside, I wonder about us just pinning him outside, pulling the tackle, and trying to run outside with some of the stuff. But, they're a fast defense. Look at them playing downhill. I think to me, that's their 2 most athletic guys at the second level against the run. I'm not saying the other guys aren't athletic, but McCreary and Al-Shahir, hopefully I'm saying his name right, used to play with the 49ers. I think they get after it. Very good in the box, and you see multiple concepts that are the same. Remember that Bengals play I showed you? And then the Colts play? You're ending up with the same thing here. 3 receivers to the right, on the same side as the back, trying to occupy defenders here. Math-wise, this works for the Titans. You can see this guy slow plays it a little bit. The give, and everybody else collapses on the football. To me, they play a very sound brand of team defense, and I really like what they do. At times, I kind of look forward to the offseason when I can kind of watch teams longer. Maybe that's because it takes me a longer time to understand certain things, maybe. I don't know. But this Titans defense looks like one that I'd like to watch more of. All right, Let's get to some run plays and talk about specific things because that was just a very generic look. This is 11 personnel. It's going to be a log play. So log, running back is getting the football, crossing the quarterback's face, running to the left side of the offense, right side of the defense. Additionally, this guard is going to pull and wrap. That's the log. It's not a trap. It's not a kick-out block. This is McCreary. That's Al-Shahir, who's to the boundary. That's Giddens, I think, 50, to the field. Look at the leverage that he's got McCreary on 2. He's inside leverage. Why? So that if they get something like this, a mesh, he's gone. He's gone right now, coming downhill. Conversely, Al-Shahir has got snag flat to the boundary. So he's holding. He's playing patient because he's got the back on his side, which is typically the RPO side. So he doesn't want to take off downhill, have Herbert potentially keep it, and then throw it to Mike Williams, who was still playing at that point. As it stands, McCreary gets involved in the tackle. I think it's a 1-yard gain. Again, he's right here. He's a shot out of a cannon. He's disruptive. I think it's going to be a great matchup, him against Aguilar and Zay Flowers, and maybe if the Ravens go 12 personnel, him against Mark Andrews or Isaiah Likely. I think he's a really good player. I think he's underrated. I liked him before the draft. Okay. Watch. I think I've already shown this one, actually. This is McCreary again, and there's Al-Shahir. Look at the response from McCreary. He's downhill now. There is no hesitation at all. He is gone. That's a committed football player. That's a guy who is like, okay, I see it, I'm gone. I trust what my coaches have taught me. He fits inside the B gap. He's disruptive, man. I'm not rooting for him this week against the Ravens for sure, but I'll enjoy watching film of the guy because I love how abrupt he is and downhill. Now, having said that, and maybe there's Titans fans who've watched this long or somebody else who's watched their games, I think we should go play action early. I think we should put some conflict in his brain. Al-Shahir, Giddens, 50. I'm going to call him 50 from here on out. I think we should put some conflict in those guys' brains, meaning run the play action early and force some indecision by them. This is a very, very light box inside the 10. Al-Shahir is a constant factor. They're basically going to double Higgins and assign a second player to check for Chase. So, they're 4 for 2, basically. Creates a light box, and Al-Shahir is committed. You can do this when you have a guy as athletic as him and who tackles very well. Now, would they do this against the Ravens? It almost would operate in reverse. We're going to see a lot of man coverages, or we're going to see really max dropping cover 2 down here. We're going to see, really contrasting styles with how Lamar is defended down there in the red zone. They're either going to go heavy pressure and play man, or they're going to drop as many people as possible and try to force Lamar to throw the ball into really tight windows. Still looking at some run concepts. No threat by the quarterback. I talked about that earlier. This is the same play. We'll watch it maybe twice over. So the defensive end, the outside linebacker, edge player to the field. I think it's Landry. I think it's Harold Landry, but I might be wrong. He's just always been underrated, if you ask me. Doesn't have to worry about the quarterback at all. Just go. And so the Ravens, to me, scheme-wise, besides early play action, I think you're looking at something where we build in similar looks to this because we know how they're going to react, and then we isolate Landry on Lamar as the read man. If you're going to run at Lamar, then we'll give it. If you're going to run down the line with the back, then we'll keep it. And I don't think that's what he's going to do because that's not what anybody does once they've seen Lamar for a possession or two. Hasn't all been good against the run, clearly. Last week, 193 on the ground. This is a 3rd and 1, week 5. Zach Moss cuts through and then pulls away from, I think it's Hooker and Bayard. 54, 56-yard touchdown run. I think this D tackle ends up wanting to be in this gap, and he doesn't. Giddens 50 is on the outside of this guard, Quentin Nelson in the B gap. They've closed off Al-Shahir. And this is easy from this point on out for Moss, who's got great acceleration. 54, 56-yard touchdown run. Could the Ravens pop off one of those? I mean, a guy like Justice Hill, if you see Gus pop off something like that, probably looking at 25, 30 before he's, caught or dealing with a person. Justice Hill certainly got the speed. Maybe Keaton Mitchell, if he gets some snaps. This is an incredible play. It's 13 yards for Moss. It's a wham trap play. The Ravens run this. I have noticed there's more success running against the Titans away from the nickel, which, again, makes this an interesting matchup. The Ravens often run the football to the boundary. The nickel defender is most often going to be to the field. Makes sense. They're running this wham trap with the H-back tight end. He's trapping this D-tackle. And what that allows is it allows these guys to fold this. The right guard goes out to the D-end, and the tackle releases right up to inside backer. So they basically can get everybody blocked up because for a moment they're leaving this D-tackle unblocked. You can see he's stepping with the guard, stepping out. But there's more success in the – I think I have 140 defensive plays. And this is just an observation. There's no statistical background here from me. I think there's more success running the football to the boundary against this team, which, again, sets us up. They're not as good against the pass as they are against the run, statistically. So we have guys who can make plays. Zay Flowers has made plays downfield. Nelson Aguilar's made a couple. He clearly missed an opportunity for another one this past week against the Steelers. We run the ball to the boundary out of 20 personnel, out of 21 personnel, out of 12 personnel, out of 11, excuse me. So it'll be an interesting matchup, I think. I love that wham trap play. We run it. We do run it under center, and I feel like it's a little predictable because this is always Ricard. To me, we got to start running some of those plays with Ricard not on the field. If that means Andrews has got to trap a D-tackle, so be it. Or likely, so be it. Maybe they're not successful. Okay, fine. But we still got to at least show that we will run it. Really cool scheme. All right, this is another run away from the nickel. The nickel is set to the field. Like I said earlier, when you're watching during the game, Al-Shahir is going to be set to the boundary. 50 is going to be set to the field. Tight end, running back into the boundary. Nickel's still going to be to the field because he's got twins. More success, in my opinion, running away from the nickel. It doesn't mean they can't stop the run without McCreary. It means however they're setting their defense, maybe they're putting a 3 technique into the boundary like they are here. However they're setting their defense, I've noticed more runs of the 6-yard, 8-yard, 9-yard variety. And again, I have 140 plays saved up just of their defense. I've noticed more big plays, more good run plays, positive run plays into the boundary than I have to the field. Maybe that's because McCreary's a badass. The Bengals had some success running early, but they just don't stay with it that often. They do a nice job here, I think, of getting up to getting up in Al-Shahir's face. I'm not saying he can't handle blocks, but any linebacker who has to deal with a block is going to be less efficient on that play if they're unblocked. We got to get guys up to him. Kind of reminds me of JOK, and I'm not saying that those are comparable players. I don't like player comparisons, but there was 2 years there where we didn't block him. We didn't block JOK at all, and he was a constant pain for us because he's unblocked. This year, totally different story. He had to deal with guys, and we really got up on him. We got to get up to these guys at the second level. Because if he runs free, if Al-Shahir runs free, he's going to keep plays from being successful. If him and McCreary can just be disruptive, we're going to have a difficult time. They get caught in a blitz here on this one. I think it's 50 from the field. A lot of people using this out motion against them for whatever reason. Maybe to widen McCreary up. They get caught in a blitz here. Ends up popping off a big run by Mixon. Look, the Bengals only had 72 yards rushing in this game. They lost 27-3. So, we know that when you're down by a lot, you're not going to be running the football a ton. But just check this out. Mixon was 14 carries for 67 yards. That's 4.78 per carry. So it's not like, they were totally unsuccessful. Teams have had moments of running the ball against them, and then for whatever reason, at times, seem to just go away from it. I'm going to move to their pass defense now. Flipping over to a different screen. My apologies. I would not say that they're no good against the pass. That would not be my characterization. They have specific areas of the field that at times people have been able to exploit. One of them is their right side of the defense. The offense is left. And I'm not going to name players. I don't, I can't tell you, oh, they're in man coverage 80% of the time. I don't, I don't work like that. I got too many teams that I'm trying to watch between the Ravens and Lions, and then trying to, do videos about rookies as well. But let's get to about 11 pass plays here before I try to give you some summary points. If you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. Again, this is one long preview, but it's the Titans-Ravens, which for me is a classic matchup. 2nd and 10, week 3. Like I said, expect to see McCreary as the nickel to the field, so we can kind of predict that where he will not be. Again, he'll be against Zay Flowers, Aguilar, or something like that. This is completion to Chase up to the offense's left, the defense's right on a 2nd and 10. Routes like this one, they've had trouble with at times this year. I actually had a couple of plays that I did not save in my database that were of this variety to the left-hand side, either comebacks or curls. That one's kind of like just an adjustment, one of those back shoulder deals that Chase and Burrow have figured out. 4th and 4, third possession against the Chargers. Again, attacking the offense's left-hand side, the defense's right. There's a really weak penalty on a Titans player, Titans D lineman for hitting Herbert. I can't believe it. I'm not showing the end zone angle, but in any case, it's Keenan Allen, I think, up top. One-on-one. So, look, hey, you got Keenan Allen and you got Jamar Chase beating people. They're going to do that. Do the Ravens have one of those guys? Well, I mean, Zay Flowers is pretty damn good. But right now, Rashad Bateman, OBJ, Nelson Aguilar don't live up to that standard. Clearly, they just don't. I think those guys can make plays. Can they make plays with the propensity that those guys did? This is going to be up top to Keenan Allen, down on the right side of the field, I should say, 42 yards. Ravens have generated some big pass plays downfield, so this should be a concern for Titans fans, for the Titans team, that we could get downfield. Zay Flowers, Nelson Aguilar. Bateman's got the ability. He's been open twice on deeper routes. One of them, whether you want to call it a drop or whatever, last week against the Steelers, that slot fade-ish type play. You have an opportunity to catch the football, and we don't. Let's phrase it that way. He's clearly talented enough to do it. I don't think OBJ is a deep threat. I think he's more, when he's healthy, he's more of a third down threat, a guy over the middle of the field, slants, making contested catches. His use last week, in my opinion, was a little bit flawed. But from a Ravens perspective, to get that done, we've got to protect Lamar. Therein lies the rub for both teams, right? They're weak against the pass, or relatively weaker against the pass, and we are able to generate big plays in the pass game, but we got to protect our quarterback. They've given up some big plays on 3rd and long. I think this is Josh Downs in the slot up here. It's similar to a concept the Ravens run, kind of similar to a slot fade, except you're getting, I believe, a deeper dig by number 1 there. It's a 3rd and 16, big arm by Anthony Richardson. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch film of him when I get time over the year, this year and in the offseason. Titans are zoning this, and like I said, the Ravens run something similar. I believe Lamar and the wide receivers come out, line up in trips, and if they see man, the slot fade is our first check. So McCreary's going to be on, in my opinion, when it's man. McCreary is going to be here, because that's the guy they want guarding the slot fade and man. And Josh Downs gave them problems, by the way. So you could say as a Ravens fan, well, that excites me because we got Zay Flowers, and we think he's better than Josh Downs. Josh Downs is having a heck of a season so far. 38-yard gain here. Like I said, great throw by Richardson on a 3rd down. 3rd and 5. Same game. Vrabel's played a lot of this. This is going to be, I believe, mesh or a drag by Downs. 3rd and 5. I think it's like 25. He plays a lot of this, and he's been burned with the usage of this against Lamar. 4-man rush, man-free, free safety middle of the field. If you remember, Vrabel walking down the sideline after Lamar scrambled for that 42 or 48-yard touchdown or something. Maybe it was 52 in the playoff game in 2020. You remember hearing him say, hey, we can't tackle him. We can't play that coverage. We can't tackle him. I mentioned it 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I can't find that clip. If you know where that clip is, or you know what I'm referencing, please, link it up or something like that, or tell me, what he said, because I seem to remember him saying, we can't play that. Now, this version of Lamar isn't busting 60-yard touchdown runs. That's just reality. but he's still hitting big runs inside the 10 for touchdowns, or he's still extending plays 16 yards for first downs. So I wonder if Vrabel is going to change some of that and play less man-free with a four-man rush and play the version of man-free that the Browns played a lot of, which is man-free with a five-man rush. I'm going to dedicate and bring five. I'm going to cover the five receivers with my next five players. 5 plus 5 is 10. And then the remaining 11th player is the free safety, who will be deep middle of the field. They've had trouble on third down. I think it's an interesting dynamic and an interesting decision for the Titans tactically. Do they bring pressure and expose themselves where they have had some weakness, which is down the field, giving up some big plays? Michael Pittman Jr. didn't seem to get off as much against them, but I thought the Colts made a concerted effort to challenge down the field last week. I tried to focus most of the film I watched from week 5 because that's the most recent game, number one. Number two, sometimes you get a player who played in week 2 and then they're injured now. So I felt like the Colts were trying to get the ball downfield against them. They had 193 rushing yards. The Colts. There was a penalty there, by the way. 193 rushing yards, and they had 250 yards passing. And of that 250 yards passing, it's 20 of 26 passing. Additionally, the tight ends gave the Titans trouble. This is a 3rd and 6. That little out motion, I think it's Ogletree, the tight end. He's to the boundary. Again, the Ravens know what we're going to get. McCreary to the field, 50 to the field, Shahir to the boundary. So in this instance, what we're getting, I think, is something like this. Ogletree motions out, and then he runs the deeper in, so like levels. So we can control which players are guarded by who, in my opinion, because we know how they're going to line up. They had trouble with tight ends, a 13-yard gain. I don't know what their percentage is of catches by tight ends and all that stuff. I don't really pay attention to all that. I watch the film, and I'll tell you what I see. And there's probably some weakness in that too. 3rd and 4, 4th possession. Minshew to the tight end on like this China out. It's against Giddens, or it's against 50 for 9 yards. Depending on what we think of 50 and 2, depending on what we think of them in their pass coverage, we can control who has to deal with Mark Andrews. A little China out here by him, and then he kind of settles down right here near the hash in this little zone. I think there's going to be opportunities for one-on-ones to the boundary, because I think I see a lot of times where the boundary side safety is looking to help out with 3, and they're just leaving this guy man. So depending on what we think of their coverage ability up there, guys like Aguilar, Flowers, Bateman. I mean, it's time for Rashad Bateman to step up. I'm a big Rashad Bateman supporter, and I hope and I think that he can contribute. He's got to do it soon because his team needs him. Like, I understand like him being upset about last week about underperforming. Cool, but your team needs you. That's a different level. That's a different responsibility than just, I want to play well. His team needs him. Tight end again. This is down bottom side. I think this was ruled complete, but it's a 2nd and 7. It's against Hooker, I think, down here to the boundary. You're going to see this from the Ravens. You're going to see similar concepts from the Ravens. If you're a Titans fan, you probably haven't listened this long, but if you have, running back, tight end into the boundary. We love smash, snag. We love that right there. When you get the tight end, running back, and another receiver into the boundary. Not necessarily what you get here. Titans are also playing man, condensed split by Pittman. They're just trying to clear out this space for the tight end. Andrews could have a big day here, guys. I'm not saying that their safeties are no good, but Andrews, to me, looks like he's getting healthier and more ready to contribute. I think that this is an opportunity for the Ravens offense to right the ship. Like I said, the Colts had almost 200 yards on the ground, 250 in the air, 20 of 26 passing. A lot of it depends on the offensive line, number one. It was a really unusual game watching the Titans defense against the Colts, because up to that game, I was like, man, these guys' defense is really good, especially against the run. They'd only given up 280 rushing yards total in the first 4 weeks, and then they give up 193 against the Colts. Now, one of those, admittedly, is the 56-yarder by Moss. Even if you take that away, You're still talking about 139 on the ground last week, which would be a season high allowed. It's an interesting matchup with the Ravens being 3-2. Disappointing loss to the Steelers in Week 5. Texans being 2-3. They want to keep up with the Jags and the Colts, obviously, in the AFC South. The history of these two franchises against each other, Harbaugh versus Vrabel. Vrabel understanding the threat, the unique threat that Lamar is because of the multiple games we've played against them, and they've defended us well at times. The dynamic of their pass defense versus our pass game, but it's kind of like we're taking a chance if we go out there and try to throw the ball 40 times because we haven't protected Lamar very well at all. Now, that dynamic could change if Morgan Moses played. He's been playing exceptional. Now, he's coming back off an injury. Morgan Moses was our best lineman, being as Tyler Linderbaum was out for 3 weeks. Linderbaum and Moses have been our best two guys, I think, clearly, with Zeitler being a close third. The left side of our offensive line is clearly a weakness at this point in time. That's tough to say. Lamar throwing the ball exceptional with time. To me, his command of the offense is growing. However, from an entire offensive standpoint, the turnovers are a real weakness at this point. I think we have 10 fumbles, not 10 fumbles lost, but 10 fumbles in 5 games and 2 interceptions thrown. I think there's another fumble that didn't count because of the penalty against the Bengals in Week 2. We need one more of Bateman, OBJ, or Duve to step up with Aguilar and give us what Aguilar has given us. We got Andrews, Zay Flowers. Those guys are kind of carrying a heavy load. Of those 4 guys, Bateman, OBJ, Duve, and Aguilar, we need 2 of them to be consistently available for the football and make plays. From a Ravens perspective, a loss here puts us at 3-3 with the Lions at home in Week 7. Of course, the Lions, there's data out there about them being a different team on the road. If they're fully healthy, which they won't be, because C.J. Gardner-Johnson's out for the year. Brian Branch, who knows when he's coming back. Actually, I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson's going to come back. I think he's that kind of guy. But in any case, 3-3 facing the Lions at home in Week 7 with that difficult 6-game stretch later in the season, I think is a real issue. This game may not be a must-win for some people, the way they look at it. I think it's a must-win for both teams. If it's not a must-win for both teams, I don't know how it could get any closer to being a must-win for both teams, which, knowing Vrabel and Harbaugh and the types of guys on their team and on our team, I think we're going to see some fireworks. I'm not talking about offensive fireworks like 39-37. I mean, I think we're going to see some physical play, and I think we're going to see some turnovers. We are very good on defense. I think they're better than they're receiving credit for. I do, however, see specific ways that we can exploit them. If we protect Lamar and we make the plays that we should in terms of catching the football and holding on to the football, there's going to be opportunities there for us to make plays. I appreciate you guys' time, man. Enjoy the game Sunday morning. It's going to be certainly early start, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. I'll do a reaction video as usual. Let me know if you have any ideas for another way to preview games. I don't want to overlap with other content creators' times when they do stuff like Sip to Tally or EA or Huddle Up Films or Cole Jackson or whoever. And so Saturday morning has been a time when I've tried to release these because no one else is kind of operating in that time frame. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other Ravens fans, other Titans fans maybe would enjoy this preview, look at the Ravens offense versus the Titans defense, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.